I'm Cindy Scheck-Snyder, and I live within the direct impact circle as well. I'm going to talk about some of the environmental issues. There's a lot more that we need to learn and study, but I will briefly touch on the natural resources that we are aware of and the threats to them from a mega airport here. The resources and threats are likely similar for any greenfield site proposed for a mega airport. This first map shows the watersheds and water resource inventory areas within the 6-mile radius of the proposed airport footprint. As with all of the maps I will show, impacts will expand far beyond the circle from urban sprawl and associated pollution migrating off the direct site. The proposed site would directly impact wetlands and waterways in 3 watersheds: Henderson Inlet watershed emptying into South Puget Sound, the Bud Deschutes River watershed emptying into Bud Inlet, the Nisqually River watershed that ends at the delta of the Billy Frank Jr. Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge. Water quality and water quantity from a large airport development will affect these watersheds, and ultimately Puget Sound and its species, including salmon and orca. Several lakes will be destroyed or impacted. Sunwood and Temple Lakes, along with part of Pattison, and some smaller unnamed lakes are within the footprint circle, and it borders Offutt Lake. There are numerous creeks and tributaries within the circle. Most of Spurgeon Creek is within the airport's direct footprint, which empties into the Deschutes River, also part of which is within the direct circle. These 3 watersheds support fish species such as Chinook, steelhead, sockeye, chum, coho, and pink salmon. In all, at least 30 species of fish, as well as a very large diversity of wildlife, use this area. This is an area with an extensive network of wetlands that provide many valuable services. Some of these are categorized by Washington DNR as known to have high conservation value, which means they support rare species or are a rare high-quality ecosystem. 3 of those are inside the circle, you can see from that bottom map there, and a large one just bordering the circle. This wetland network is, of course, very important as fish and wildlife habitat. They also act as important filters that improve water quality for our drinking water, for our streams and rivers, and ultimately for South Puget Sound. They reduce erosion, protecting our lands and water, and they play a major role in tempering floods and droughts. According to Thurston County Emergency Management, the Deschutes River that much of this wetland network supports is the fastest rising and falling river in the county. Can you imagine what it would be with these wetlands being drained and paved over? These wetlands also recharge very important aquifers. According to Thurston County, this entire area is a critical aquifer recharge area, including the McAllister Springs Aquifer Groundwater Sensitive Area. And wetlands also play a large role in moderating the effects of climate change. This aerial photo shows that there is an extensive forested landscape here. Many of these trees are more than 80 years old and also called legacy trees. Legacy trees have structural complexity and character, providing habitat for many types of wildlife. They also store massive amounts of carbon, as in carbon dioxide, from the air. They retain huge amounts of water, also helping with flood and drought events. And they help purify our water and air. And important in this day of high stress and anxiety is the serenity we get from natural landscapes, especially where there are trees. Research supports that even a short 20-minute walk in the woods is enough to produce positive physical changes in our bodies. The Nature Conservancy estimates that only about 3% of native Puget Sound prairies still exist, and some of the most valuable areas are located here in Thurston County. A few of the larger prairies can be seen easily, while many others are scattered among forest, farms, and homes. These prairies are home to several rare and endangered species and help define the landscape of Thurston County. They also are an important carbon sink for greenhouse gases. The Tenalquat Prairie Preserve and Weir Prairie Research Natural Area are directly adjacent to the proposed airport site, and both are habitat for multiple conservation targets, including at least 6 federally threatened species. Within this circle, there are 79 acres of important habitats that are permanently protected and managed by the Capital Land Trust. Imagine this aerial photo 50 years from now if there is a mega airport and urban sprawl here. We need to really think about what we want the future of Thurston County and Western Washington to look and be like. According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, approximately 12 federally threatened or endangered species could be impacted by developing this green site. More study is needed for sure, but we know we have significant occupied habitat for the federally threatened Mazama pocket gopher within this circle. These greenfield sites support rare habitats that are only becoming more rare, so it makes sense that they also support threatened and endangered species. Numerous and diverse wildlife call this home. In order to continue to survive here, these animals need territories, they need to find food and mates, and they need room to roam. How would we mitigate for wildlife? Where do they go when there is a mega airport and urban sprawl in their home? How would they get somewhere else if there is somewhere else to go? And like us, if their home is not directly destroyed, air, water, and noise pollution will compromise their livelihood. This airport proposal strongly contradicts all the rhetoric we hear from our state being progressive on climate change and greenhouse gas reduction. Jay Inslee this week is attending the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Egypt as a leader in climate change. He signed into law the Climate Commitment Act in May 21 with aggressive greenhouse gas reduction goals for 2030, 2040, and approaching net zero by 2050. Climate experts are saying that this new mega airport proposal not only does not support those greenhouse gas reduction goals, but it drastically sets them back, making them unreachable. The transportation sector is the biggest source of U.S. carbon dioxide emissions, and aircraft are the most rapidly growing emissions source within that. But we are told this is an airport of the future that could have improved environmental responsibility. Climate experts are skeptical of this airport of the future concept and that it is being called a greenwashing effect to sell it. Most sources say alternative fuels for aircraft are decades away. The technology is not yet developed, and when it is, it would require many airports to support it in order for it to be feasible for air travel. We are being told that biofuels could be used and it will be better. Biofuel is proposed to be only a portion of the fuel mixed with regular jet fuel, and they would still be emitting 92% of their greenhouse gases. And that is at current flight volumes, which are projected to be far greater in the future, especially if they have a mega airport here to use. Our greenfield site of mature and well-established wetlands, forests, and grasslands is a very significant natural carbon sink, mitigating greenhouse gases that are currently existing and helping us to achieve our greenhouse gas reduction goals. The trees and plants we have here take carbon dioxide from the air and store it as carbon in plant material, wood, and eventually soil, taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Many climate experts express that their value in greenhouse gas reduction cannot be overstated. Paving over wetlands, forests, and grasslands, which are super greenhouse gas neutralizers, to increase air traffic, which is super greenhouse gas emitters, just doesn't add up for reaching greenhouse gas reduction goals. In addition to the greenhouse gas contradiction, replacing these greenfield sites with concrete and pavement will add to the climate change problem with a heat island effect. The heat island effect is the higher air temperatures we see in urban settings compared to rural areas because solar energy is more readily absorbed into man-made structures than natural ones. Heat islands not only have increased temperatures, but also increased energy consumption and elevated emissions of air pollutants and greenhouse gases. There are laws in place to protect all these things for good reasons. Washington's Climate Commitment Act to combat climate change, the Clean Water Act to protect wetlands, surface waters, and drinking water, the Endangered Species Act to protect species and their habitats from becoming extinct, and Washington State adopted the Growth Management Act in 1990 to respond to a lack of common goals in conservation and land use. Some of the problems this law addresses includes a loss of resource lands and rural character for urban sprawl, increased traffic congestion, and pollution. We are being told that there will be mitigation for environmental impacts. The CACC's Washington Aviation System Plan, or WASP as they call it, recommends a 4-to-1 mitigation for wetlands. So for every acre of wetland destroyed, 4 would be replaced. I love this crowd. Is it even realistic or feasible to recreate the well-established wetland ecosystems we have here now, hundreds of years in the making? All existing wetlands are supposedly protected already. Where would you go to rebuild a 4-to-1 ratio for this many wetlands, likely thousands of acres? In what watershed? What happens to the existing watersheds that nourish this area and South Puget Sound? How many years would it take for a newly constructed wetland to have the established functions we have here now and need now for greenhouse gas reduction goals? And what about forests? What about grasslands and prairies? What about endangered species and other wildlife that depends on this habitat? We need to keep these questions in mind when and if there is discussions on mitigation. This is a quote from CACC's Airport of the Future document. A key consideration when siting a new airport is that it be in a rural area with low population density. The size of such a facility will require a substantial footprint, and rural areas are better suited to displace the least number of people possible if required. Well, it sounds like we will all continue to refine and show that choosing to pave over and commercialize a greenfield site because they appear to be open spaces for the taking may impact less total number of people directly, but are much more complex than is being portrayed so far by the CACC. This greenfield site provides greenhouse gas reduction, neutralization of pollution, floods and droughts, important wildlife habitat, and open space for farming, ranching, and small businesses, and mental and physical health for humans. It appears that the issue of projected increased air traffic will require much more innovative thinking than just setting a mega airport in a rural area. Thank you.